Thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies. Allow me to acknowledge all the leaders who joined us after we had started, all protocol observed. The play we have just watched captures the tragic situation of many of our people. It's titled, We the People. It takes us on a journey into the lives of ordinary people who every day come face to face with situations that challenge our humanity and our dignity. The hospital scene is all too familiar. So is the passport office, the local municipality, and it goes on and on, just like that. Just as the lives we live in, dehumanizing circumstances every day. We the People is the title of the play. And yet we the people, we see this play as the same we the people reflected in the opening lines of the Constitution. That Constitution goes on to lay the foundation, principles, virtues and values that advance the dignity, happiness and prosperity of we the people. So when we look at our lives as captured in a play like this, in comparison with the ideals captured in our Constitution, we are confronted by a wide gap. This is the gap that the People's Human Rights Manifesto that we are launching today seeks to bridge. In 2013, Zimbabwe adopted what is generally accepted as a progressive constitution, which has got an expanded Bill of Rights. Once adopted, the challenge that faces every constitution is first implementation, but also how to avoid rolling back the gains. We have, over the years, under our Hands Off the People's Constitution campaign, called and continue to call for the alignment of our laws to the Constitution. But most importantly, the actual challenge is now how to translate the promise of the Constitution into a real positive transformation of the people's lives and our societies, delivering bread and butter and making sure that the opening phrase, we the people, in the preamble of our Constitution is translated into real power to the people. This is the principle at the foundation of democracy. Sovereignty resides in the people, and the play reminds that we are the people. As Section 1 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe boldly declares that Zimbabwe is a unitary, democratic, and sovereign republic. Throughout that Constitution, the principle of sovereignty of the people features, consolidating the power distributed among the different arms of government back to the people. This is why Section 3(2)(f) of the Constitution outlines as one of the founding values and principles, respect for the people of Zimbabwe, from whom the authority to govern is derived. In establishing executive authority in Section 88, the Constitution lays down that executive authority derives from the people of Zimbabwe and must be exercised in accordance with the Constitution. The same principle stresses in Chapter 6, where the Constitution establishes legislative authority in Section 117 and says legislative authority of Zimbabwe derives from the people. Section 162, which establishes judicial authority, also states that judicial authority derives from the people of Zimbabwe. As if the three arms of government are not enough to labor this principle, independent institutions are further created by Chapter 12 to protect the sovereignty and interests of the people. The key question for our society, proud as we are of the work that we have done in giving birth to a new constitution, is how do we ensure that this beautiful promise of power to the people is more than just rhetoric. And when we say power to the people, we speak not of the intoxicating substance that seeks control for its own sake, but we are speaking of power, the power to transform and give meaning to the people's everyday struggle, putting food on the table, ensuring health care for everyone, education for our children, social protection for the vulnerable, employment for the young, social service delivery for the masses, protection of the environment, and ensuring that our resources serve adequately and equitably this and all the coming generations. The power to give life and meaning to life, not the power to kill, to take, or accumulate and control. Now, with this clearly laid out by our Constitution, we the people concept, how do we bring each other as a people to a national eureka moment that, hey, that beautiful phrase in the Constitution, we the people, strengthened by a strong foundation of the sovereignty of the people. Yes, that phrase, indeed, we are the people. Tisu ano acho, as Anawasu would aptly say. From 2020 to 2022, in implementing the Hands of the People Constitution, communities did speak out of a sense of emptiness, feeling that our power as a people is illusory. It is a fiction, and it will remain a fiction until we step forward and claim it. With this came the realization that there is need for the people of Zimbabwe to build a case for human rights as central to our national transformation agenda. We have seen year in, year out political manifestos coming out of different political movements. We have seen economic blueprints coming out of different regimes. And we look at all these and ask ourselves, where are we in all these if the Constitution agrees that we are the people? If we do not pay attention to the human rights question, the bread and butter question, we risk building an economic kingdom that serves just a few, while the many are excluded. If we do not bring human rights into the center of our political movements, do we not risk building terrorist movements that celebrate shedding of blood ahead of delivering food on the table and sending our children to school? If we do not bring into this conversation the question of ethical leadership and demand values in our leaders, do we not risk creating monsters that use political office as a means to access the feeding trough, locking the people out? Now, these are very deep and serious issues for the people, and they are the inspiration behind the People's Human Rights Manifesto. An urgent call for the economy, the politics, and the Constitution to deliver for the people today and tomorrow, to deliver real transformation, not merely slogans, manifestos, and economic blueprints. The People's Human Rights Manifesto comes from a yearning to do more for rights. While over the years we have mobilized each other to exercise our democratic rights, like registering to vote and voting in the actual elections, these are important aspects of our civic life. But on their own, they can never deliver real transformation. It is not enough for us as the people to go and vote if we do not shape the agenda of the vote. Every election will come and go, creating new demigods who are ever hungry. Indeed, many elections have come and gone, and all we see is an increase in violence followed by worse economic plunder, decay, and impunity. Honestly, shall we gather ourselves every 5 years and say register to vote, give each other transport to do so, and don't care about the values that drive the vote? We do care about people exercising the right to vote, but even more, we desire to care about the human rights agenda that should be at the center of the electoral conversation beyond the ballot. As we have seen in the play We the People, every electoral season, our communities become battlefields where blood is shed, promises are made, and thereafter we are left on our own to bury our brothers and sisters. With this realization, we as ZimRights came together in our communities in 2022 and agreed to design a program of action that will seek to change this reality. The People's Human Rights Manifesto uses universal language of human rights first and foremost to express what Zimbabweans expect from those who aspire to lead in any aspect. The manifesto captures the views of Zimbabweans from all walks of life who speak first and foremost as citizens of Zimbabwe outside the restrictions of political party agendas. It is enriched by the opinions of over 250,000 ZimRights members spread across the country, as well as civil society leaders who were part of this conversation, all speaking from their common position as citizens of Zimbabwe. The manifesto aims to shift the power of elections from politicians back to the electorate where it rightly belongs. It represents a departure from past practices where politicians could influence votes through the exchange of perishable goods and the politics of personalities. It empowers citizens to participate meaningfully in civic processes and amplifies the bread and butter issues that citizens care about by framing them in the normative force of human rights. The manifesto also sets benchmarks for evaluating the conduct of elected officials throughout their tenure in office. It is a pact between citizens and the officials they elect, which promotes policy-based and performance-based electoral choices instead of cheap populism. The manifesto introduces a new era of accountability in Zimbabwe's political processes. It serves as the convergence point that unites citizens' aspirations, human rights, and the national electoral processes, redefining what it means to hold public office and carry the people's mandate to govern. The manifesto belongs to the people of Zimbabwe, and its strength lies in reflecting the ideas of a diverse cross-section of citizens, including marginalized communities who are often excluded from public debate and minorities in Zimbabwe. It draws upon the inspiration of the Bill of Rights in the Constitution to translate these fundamental rights into measurable action points. Some of you may have already interacted with this manifesto. If you have not, after the launch, which our national chairperson is going to preside over, we will be sharing copies of the manifesto. And when you look at the structure of the manifesto, you will see that in the preamble, we define the ethos behind the people's initiative to compile this manifesto ahead of the 2023 elections in Zimbabwe. We concisely capture the 10 priority demands or asks expressed by Zimbabweans. It defines the human rights bases and action points for each of the 10 asks. In conclusion, there is a section on the way forward in the manifesto that explains how citizens can use the 10 asks as benchmarks to monitor, evaluate, and report on the performance of elected officials. Annexed to the manifesto are a commitment card which electoral candidates will co-sign with community representatives to signify their commitment to abide by and deliver on the 10 key asks stated in the manifesto, as well as a tracking card which communities, with the help of ZimRights, will use to track progress made and specific actions taken by elected officials to deliver on the key asks. The People's Human Rights Manifesto is not just a document. It is a movement of people choosing to stand up and be counted. It is launched today to begin a journey towards transformation, bringing to life the promise of the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, and the power of the people to shape their own destiny. It is backed by 219 committees of local organizers spread across the country. As our prospective leaders begin the work of canvassing for votes, these communities are ready to vote. But more than voting, they are ready for a substantial conversation on the place of human rights in elections and beyond the ballot. We live in a toxic environment where there are accusations and counter-accusations on who is to blame for the mess that we are in. The struggle for social transformation can never be outsourced. We, the people, must lead from whatever space we are in. We are in this together. I am not saying this to exonerate political leaders of their duty to lead, but to motivate all of us to step forward. Nelson Mandela said, leadership is not positional, it is behavioral. If we, the people, want the politicians to be organized, we too must be organized. If we want the leaders to have a plan, we too must have a plan. If we want the leaders to have clarity, we, the people, must have clarity. The People's Human Rights Manifesto is our plan, a clear plan of what we expect from our leaders. Simple and easy to understand, to track and evaluate performance year by year. The election which begins this year is a 5-year race that never ends until the 10 key priorities in this manifesto are delivered. From now onwards, our elections must not be allowed to deliver only dead bodies and more polarization. We want to have human rights at the center. We are by no means claiming that this manifesto is perfect. It is not. We are by no means claiming that we are more qualified to do this. We are not. We are simply doing our best, and we welcome more support and involvement from those with more ideas. And let me close with the popular parable of the mustard seed. The electoral kingdom of the people must be like a mustard seed that the voter took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it has been properly managed, it grows into the greatest of shrubs and it becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air can come and make nests in its branches, giving food to the hungry, health to the sick, shelter to the homeless, education to the children. It inspires hope in those seemingly empty promises of our Constitution, and it awakens all of us to a national eureka moment that, hey, after all, we are the people. Tisu Anwaj.
Freedom is coming. Africa